think one of the greatest things about coming into a new culture and assimilating to it is the fact that you actually understand your culture better. So at first, when I, uh, when I was going to school and I grew up in the United States and I began to learn English as well, and I started assimilating to the culture of the United States, I think I felt a little bit worldly. I felt I was better than my parents because I knew more, and I would just tell them in front of their face, I know more about this subject than you do. But I think recently I've begun to learn that I don't want to feel so worldly. I know I've begun to move away from vanity and try to learn as much as I can. So I want to observe more than I conclude. I think, yeah, education is probably, again, the biggest reason why I felt like I had more to say than my parents. And even today, a lot of times I would have arguments with them about religion because I'm no longer a Muslim. Uh, and so we would have a lot of arguments, and the way I argue at a certain point, the way he argues back, there's misunderstandings there as well. And so sometimes I feel like, okay, yeah, my parents, are not as smart as I am. But I think I'm still struggling with moving away from feeling like that, from thinking that my parents are dumb and I'm smart. I don't want to feel like that because I still want to learn as much as I can because I think they can teach me a lot about Afghanistan, which I don't know much, and I really want to learn that. And I always go back to my mom and ask her, well, what was your childhood like? What did you do? And I always enjoy her stories as well. As a freshman, I think Christmas break of my freshman year, when I came back, I started to see some of the superstition, and I started to judge it at that point because for a long time, there's this one superstition where you're not allowed to clip your nails at night, and for a long time I followed that. There's another one that when you're going to sleep, say your prayer, or you say the Islamic creed, and then you blow the demons around from all the four corners of your room. And so I would do that, and even when I became an atheist for a time, I would still do that. Subconsciously, because I was thinking, why can't I get away from this? So it developed within me. But I started to realize these things, and I thought, do these really matter? Who am I doing it for? And I think one of the biggest things that really made a decision for me that I could no longer be a Muslim was the fact that I was a Muslim for my parents, because it pleased my parents that I was a Muslim. I never really believed in God. I hated praying 5 times a day, and my God, I tried as much as I could not to fast on Ramadan. So I think that was why I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And when you're educated, when you read more, and I read the Quran as well in translation, which I never did. It was forbidden to read it in translation among my parents. Because it has to be in Arabic when it's not the Quran if it's not in Arabic. So when I read it in translation, I saw some of the very offensive passages in there. I started to realize, I can't possibly be among people who advocate for beating women, for neglecting education, for scaring children into submission, into believing that certain things are right just because the Quran says so. So you're not allowed to you're not allowed to ask a certain question. So because of that, I moved away from it. I love my parents and I love my family as well. But I think we've learned to differentiate between intellectual interests and just the fact that we're a family. We always, to each other, we always say, I'm your son. You're always going to love me. And I would say, Mom, you're my mother. I don't care where I go. You're my mother. I will always love you. So we have to differentiate between that because we are separating. And I think the fact that I am no longer a Muslim still, they just don't like it. Not only because of how they're seen in the community, but also because they have this belief that I'm damned for all eternity because I'm no longer a Muslim. And so my mom, I think, presumptuously sometimes says, you will never be successful in life because you're not a Muslim. God will never help you. And these are certain things sometimes I feel, a little bit very, very melancholy because she says these, or even my dad. But again, I try as much as I can not to move into that subject as much with them, to just differentiate and try to talk about different things because I don't want them to just think that I don't care about them.